A low rumble shook the night as lightning tore across the sky above Beaumont, Texas. Declan, Gunny Belmore, killed the engine of his worn-out Chevy pickup, rain pounding on the windshield so hard it almost drowned out his thoughts. He gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, then glanced at the crumpled court document on the passenger seat, a judge's approval allowing him to attend his daughter's graduation. He stepped out into the downpour, boots splashing on the slick pavement. The old house in front of him used to belong to Ramona Serena's late mother, who had once been his sole ally in seeing Jada. Now, through the curtain of rain, he could make out a light shining behind the porch window. "God, give me a break," Declan muttered as thunder shook the air. He took a deep breath, approached the porch, and raised his fist to knock. The door flung open before his knuckles met wood. Serena stood there with one hand still on the doorknob, her eyes filled with fury and something else, maybe fear, maybe contempt. She wore a thin cardigan over a simple shirt and jeans, but the lines on her face were sharper than the last time he'd seen her. "I knew you'd show up," she snapped, voice nearly drowned out by the roaring rain. "Always doing things your way, aren't you?" "Serena," Declan started, "I'm not looking for trouble. I'm here for Jada. I have a legal right." She cut him off. "A legal right? Don't give me that. You lost any moral right the moment you put a gun to Arden's head." Lightning lit up the porch, revealing Declan's haggard expression. Rain ran down his short, military-cropped hair, soaking the collar of his jacket. "I made mistakes, Serena, but that was years ago," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Look, this is about Jada, not us." She let out a harsh laugh. "Us? There is no us. You nearly shot Arden in my bedroom. You went ballistic like a wild animal. You could have killed someone." Declan swallowed. The memory of that night was as vivid as the lightning overhead. He had been deployed for months, returned home unannounced, and found Serena with Arden. The heartbreak and the bourbon had done the rest. "I'm not here to relive that. I'm here because I want to see my daughter walk across that stage." Serena's eyes flickered. "Jada doesn't need you," she spat, but her voice wavered. "She's graduating tomorrow and you're not messing this up. You have no idea how hard it's been raising her alone." He held up the damp court paper. "The judge says I can be there, Serena. I've missed too many moments already." She lunged forward, nearly snatching the document from his grip. "Judge or not, you set foot in that ceremony, I'll—" She inhaled, and for a moment her gaze flicked to the darkness behind Declan. "I'll do what I have to. You're nothing but a ticking time bomb, Declan." He tried to speak, but the sound of footsteps behind Serena caught both their attention. In the dim porch light, Jada appeared tall, slender, a faint resemblance to Declan's sharp cheekbones. The look on her face flickered between shock and silent longing. "Mom, stop!" Jada shouted, her voice wavering. Why are you yelling like this?" Serena spun around. "Go back inside. I'm handling this." Thunder crackled again, illuminating Jada's expression of raw hurt. She lifted her chin, eyes brimming with tears. "I want Dad at my graduation." The finality in her tone made Serena's shoulders tense. Declan stood frozen, rainwater dripping from his jacket onto the porch. He caught Jada's eye just for a second and saw the 14-year gap since he'd last held her in his arms. She was no longer the little girl he remembered. Serena turned on her heel, voice trembling with suppressed anger. "Jada, you don't know what you're asking. He's unstable. Do you have any idea what he's done?" Jada's lips quivered, but she held firm. "I know enough, and I know I want him there. I'm not a child anymore." The tension on the porch felt thick as the humidity in the stormy air. Declan glanced to the driveway when headlights suddenly swept across the yard, a patrol car just passing by, but enough to make Serena grip the doorknob harder. "You see?" she hissed at Declan, casting a wary eye toward the police car. "I'm not afraid to call them again if you cause trouble." Declan lifted both hands in a gesture of peace. "No trouble," he whispered, trying to keep his voice calm. "I'll go, but I will be at that ceremony." He stepped backward off the porch, water splashing around his ankles. His gaze lingered on Jada, her hand half raised, as if she wanted to reach out but didn't dare. He nodded slightly, and she answered with a sad, almost imperceptible dip of her head. "Tomorrow," he mouthed, letting the thunder swallow his words. Serena slammed the door. Inside, Jada's muffled voice rose in protest, but Declan couldn't make out the words. Alone on the porch, he looked up at the sky, letting the rain wash down his face as if it could strip away years of regret. A dull ache settled in his chest as he turned toward his truck. When he slid back into the driver's seat, he noticed his hands were shaking. The battered court paper lay on the passenger seat, symbol of a rights he once never thought he'd have to fight for. He exhaled, started the engine, and pulled away from the house. In the rearview mirror, the porch light glowed faintly, flickering in the storm. One last chance to do something right, he muttered, wiping rainwater from his brow. He had no clue what kind of havoc tomorrow would bring, but after losing so many milestones in Jada's life, he refused to let this one slip away. Rain still pelted the roads the next morning, though the storm's rage had softened to a dreary drizzle. Declan pulled into the gravel parking lot of a small motel on the edge of town. He hadn't bothered to rent a permanent place. He'd only come back to Beaumont a week ago, determined to see Jada graduate. Inside the modest motel room, the walls bore the faint scent of stale cigarettes. Declan tossed his jacket over a rickety chair and ran a hand through his damp hair, letting out a weary sigh. Sleep had been impossible after last night's confrontation. As he peeled off his soaked boots, memories clawed their way back Serena's voice, the twisted anger in her eyes, the distant look on Jada's face. It all crashed together like the thunder still rumbling far off in the distance. He closed his eyes, mind drifting to a different storm years ago. He'd been 24, newly married. Serena, barely 19, had that mischievous smile that could light up a whole city block. Declan still remembered how she laughed, twirling around their tiny living room in a cheap wedding dress. He'd proposed at a diner near Camp Pendleton during his leave. Back then, she'd said yes in the blink of an eye. But love and loyalty weren't enough when the Marine Corps shipped him out for months on end. Serena had grown lonely. Calls and letters weren't enough. Then came that fateful night he returned from deployment earlier than expected, an empty beer bottle in one hand, heart pounding from a mix of excitement and dread. He found her in their bedroom with Arden. The sight tore his sanity to shreds. Drunk, furious, lost, Declan had whipped out his sidearm, pinned Arden to the wall. Everything was a blur after that. Serena's screams, Arden's terrified babbling, cops storming in. When the dust settled, Declan had faced charges. Military superiors intervened. He avoided prison, but Serena got the restraining order, full custody of Jada and the house. He was left with a bruised reputation and a shattered soul. Now, Declan snapped back to the present. He rubbed his temples, the old headache throbbing behind his eyes. The phone on the motel nightstand vibrated, pulling him from his reverie. "Hey, Gunny," a familiar female voice greeted. "It's Cora. You in town?" Coraline Cora Davis, an old friend who ran Rose's diner, had heard through the grapevine that Declan was back. "Morning, Cora," he answered, sinking onto the bed. "Yeah, I got in a week ago." She let out a relieved laugh. "About time. Rumor says you're looking for trouble showing up at Serena's place in the middle of the night?" Declan groaned softly. "You know how gossip spreads. I'm not looking for trouble. I just want to see my daughter graduate. You free?" "Got a busy lunch shift, but swing by after 11. We can talk," Cora said. "And hey, Declan, don't do anything crazy." He managed a half-smile. "No promises." They hung up. Declan glanced at the clock. Almost 9 a.m. Jada's graduation ceremony was set for the following day. He had a small window to confirm any final permission with the school or see if Serena might have changed her mind overnight. He stripped off his soggy shirt, noticing new lines of tension across his shoulders in the motel mirror. A scrappy Marine tattoo on his bicep reminded him of the resilience he'd once sworn to uphold. "You can face worse than this, Gunny," he muttered to his reflection. "Don't wimp out now." But beneath that tough facade, the swirl of guilt and longing for a real father-daughter bond tightened his chest. He wondered if Jada believed half of the stories Serena must have told her. Did Jada see him as the monster her mother painted? He forced himself to stop overthinking. First, he'd see Cora. Then he'd figure out how to approach the school, one step at a time. Throwing on a fresh t-shirt and jeans, Declan left the motel, ignoring the tired look the desk clerk shot him. The drizzle persisted, But the sky showed hints of clearing. He had to hope things might clear for him too, at least enough to let him stand in the crowd and watch Jada toss her cap tomorrow. Rose's Diner sat off Highway 90, a squat retro-style building with a neon sign that flickered in pink and turquoise. Declan parked and slipped inside, greeted by a medley of coffee, frying bacon, and the clatter of dishes. The place was packed for the lunch rush truckers, local families, construction workers on their break. "Over here!" Cora hollered from behind the counter, vigorously wiping down the chrome surface. Her dark hair was swept up in a messy bun, and her kindly eyes sparkled despite the midday chaos. "Grab a seat, Gunny." Declan waved in thanks and squeezed into a corner booth. A waitress one he didn't recognize plopped a menu in front of him. "Welcome to Rose's," she said, then darted off to handle another table. He watched Cora expertly juggle customer orders, hollering out cooking instructions to the kitchen crew. A new busboy hustled past, nearly bumping into Declan's arm. Finally, after 10 frantic minutes, Cora dropped into the seat across from him, letting out a huff. "Phew, it's been a day," she said, blowing a stray hair off her forehead. "Haven't seen you in ages. Last I heard, you were off in what, Oklahoma?" Declan nodded. "Yeah. Working shutdowns at refineries, moving around, you know how it is." She tapped her nails on the table, eyeing him with a mixture of concern and warmth. "You sure picked one hell of a time to come back. Heard about last night from Bethany Serena's neighbor. She saw your truck outside. Cops nearly got called?" He shrugged, trying to look unaffected. "Serena threatened it. She's not thrilled I'm here. But the judge gave me permission to attend Jada's graduation. That's all I want." Cora rolled her eyes. "We both know Serena's got a temper. But hey, maybe Jada's old enough to make her own decisions. The girl's finishing high school tomorrow, right?" "Right," Declan replied quietly, fiddling with a sugar packet. "I've missed so much, Cora. Feels like I'm trying to read the last page of a book I never got to open." Before she could respond, the diner door chimed. Declan glimpsed a tall figure stepping in Roy Lannister, a local beat cop and occasional diner regular. Roy nodded at Cora, then gave Declan a quick glance of recognition. "Belmore," Roy greeted, sliding into a stool at the counter. "Heard you're back. Everything peaceful?" Cora gave Roy a playful glare. "Let him eat in peace, Roy. He's done nothing but order a coffee so far." Roy's mouth twitched in a half-smile. "Just checking. You know how it is around here. Folks talk." Then he turned to the waitress for a fresh cup of coffee. Declan leaned in, lowering his voice to Cora. "Looks like my every move's under the microscope." Cora pursed her lips. "That's small-town life, hun, but folks forget easy if you lay low. Just don't provoke Serena." She paused, then changed the subject. "On a different note, we got a new hire out back girl named Marley. She's quiet, keeps to herself, came from out of state. Just watch out for her, yeah? Something in her eyes screams she's running from trouble." Declan nodded, curious, but not in the mood to pry. "Sure. It's your diner, though. You be careful." Cora smirked. "I can handle it. But you know me soft spot for strays, whether it's a battered cat or a runaway waitress." He smiled. Despite the swirl of tension in his own life, the familiarity of Rose's diner felt strangely comforting. The coffee arrived, and he took a sip, the warmth anchoring him momentarily. They exchanged a few more words about the diner's business, local changes, and then the conversation returned to Jada. Cora reached out, placing a hand over Declan's. "Look, I know it's tough, but show up tomorrow. Stand where you're allowed. Don't start a scene. Jada will see you, and that might mean more than you realize." Declan inhaled deeply, letting her advice settle. "Thanks, Cora. I appreciate it." "Anytime, Gunny," she said, standing up. "Now I gotta get back to these orders before someone flips a table." With that, she hurried off, leaving Declan to wrestle with his thoughts. He stared out the window at the overcast sky, a heaviness in his chest. Tomorrow he'd finally see Jada in cap and gown. But he couldn't shake the feeling that the thunderclouds of last night's argument were still hanging overhead, ready to break again at any moment. Late afternoon found Declan idling in the school parking lot, hands gripping the wheel of his truck. He needed to confirm the final details of the graduation ceremony. Outside, a few students loitered by the entrance, excited chatter about tomorrow's big day. Declan watched them, heart aching as he imagined Jada among them. He forced himself to step out, ignoring the curious stares from a passing group of teenagers. The hallway smelled like fresh paint and stale gum. In the main office, a receptionist, Mrs. Alvin, greeted him politely, though her eyebrows rose slightly at his presence. "How can I help you, sir?" He cleared his throat, producing the court document. "I'm Declan Belmore, Jada Belmore's father. The court granted me permission to attend graduation tomorrow. I just want to make sure—" "One moment." Mrs. Alvin cut him off with a practiced smile. She pecked at her keyboard, then stood up. "The principal, Mr. Sykes, will see you now." Inside a cramped office lined with motivational posters, Principal Sykes extended a handshake. "Mr. Belmore, we received the court notice. Yes, you're legally permitted to attend, as you know. Just maintain our guidelines, stay in the designated seating area. Miss Serena has expressed concerns." Declan's jaw tightened. Of course Serena would have called ahead. "Understood. I'm here to support my daughter, not cause a scene." Sykes nodded, relieved. "Good. We want tomorrow to be a positive experience for all seniors. Jada's an excellent student. Congratulations, Mr. Belmore." Declan's shoulders eased slightly. "Thank you, sir." He left the school, a swirl of relief and nerves colliding in his gut. Outside, he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure leaning against a shiny sedan Serena. She must have followed him. She crossed her arms as he approached. "So you had to run to the principal now?" She hissed under her breath, wary of students within earshot. "Couldn't resist showing off your precious piece of paper?" Declan kept his voice low and calm. "I'm not showing off anything. I came to confirm I can sit in the stands tomorrow without being thrown out." She scoffed. "Well, you got your pass, okay? But don't you dare try to approach Jada afterward. She doesn't need that drama." He inhaled, steadying himself. "You don't speak for her anymore, Serena. She's old enough to decide if she wants to see me after the ceremony." Her eyes flashed with anger, but she pulled in a tight breath, lowering her voice. "This isn't over, Declan. Don't forget what you did. People don't just forgive and forget attempted murder." "I never pulled the trigger," he said flatly, memories swirling of that dreadful night. "And I've been paying for it ever since, but I won't be pushed aside any longer." A tense silence lingered before Serena gave a curt nod toward her car. "I have errands. Stay away from our house. Jada's with me tonight. She doesn't need you confusing her." Declan bit back a retort as she stormed off, the sedan's engine roaring to life before speeding away. Part of him wanted to shout after her, but instead he clenched his fists and counted to 5. He'd promised Cora no more fights, at least not today. When he finally returned to his truck, the sunlight had broken through the clouds, casting warm rays over the parking lot. A small sign of hope, maybe. He started the engine, uncertain of where to go next. The old ache of loneliness gnawed at him. Even if the law gave him this one chance, the emotional divide seemed far greater. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Harlow, Jada's friend from school. Just want you to know Jada does want you there tomorrow. Don't let Mrs. Belmore scare you off. She's stressed, but Jada's counting on you." Declan exhaled, tension easing a fraction. He typed a quick thanks, heart pounding. He didn't know who Harlow was, but the message confirmed what he longed to believe. Jada wanted him there. "Okay, kid," he muttered. "I'll be there." With that, he pulled out of the parking lot, a glimmer of determination in his eyes. He still had no clue how tomorrow's ceremony would actually play out. But at least he knew one thing: he'd stand in those bleachers or auditorium seats, no matter what storms brewed within or without. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough for now. A thin layer of fog hugged the edges of Beaumont's old industrial district as Declan "Gunny" Belmore pulled up behind a storage facility early the next morning. He clicked off his headlights, letting the quiet of dawn envelop him. The smell of wet asphalt lingered, a faint echo of last night's rain, and through the fog he could almost imagine he was back in Afghanistan, scanning the perimeter for threats. He sighed, stepping out of his truck. The reason he was here: he needed to pick up a dusty trunk of old Marine Corps gear he'd stashed away years ago. The trunk held more than just uniforms and medals. It held memories, good and bad. Let's get it over with, he muttered, heading inside. A lone overhead bulb buzzed in the narrow hallway. At Unit 54, he fiddled with the padlock until it clicked open. The metallic screech of the rolling door set his teeth on edge. Inside, the trunk sat behind a stack of cardboard boxes labeled with scribbled words, bedding, kitchen stuff, Jada's old books. He swallowed at the sight of the last one, an ache stirring in his chest. As he dragged the trunk forward, the overhead bulb flickered. His mind flashed back to a night in Helmand Province, where the only light came from flares and muzzle flashes. The memory jolted him as a box slipped from his grip, crashing onto the concrete floor. He rubbed his eyes, breathing hard. "Damn it, Reyes," he murmured under his breath, recalling how that mission ended with a battered unit limping back to base at sunrise. Reyes survived, but the scars, both mental and physical, left their mark on them all. Declan forced himself to refocus. He flipped open the trunk. On top lay a wrinkled stack of desert camo utilities, dog tags clinking softly against the metal edge. Beneath that, an old photo of him with his platoon smiling young faces, no trace of the horrors they'd eventually see. "You were the reason I kept going," he said softly, eyes drifting to a smaller snapshot pinned in the corner. It showed a 10-year-old Jada, bright-eyed and proud, wearing a Welcome Home Dad shirt. She'd been so excited that day. He'd barely recognized her after 6 months away. He found what he needed. A folded envelope with the last few letters from Ramona. In them, she'd enclosed photos of Jada and sweet notes of encouragement. Declan carefully slid the envelope into his jacket pocket, locked the trunk, and carried a smaller bag of items out to his truck. He'd come back for the rest another time if he could muster the strength to face more memories. Outside, the fog was lifting, revealing a pale morning sky. Declan tossed the bag into the passenger seat and paused, gazing at the horizon. Something about the early light reminded him of those Afghanistan dawns, how daybreak often meant a temporary ceasefire, yet the tension never fully disappeared. "At least I'm alive," he told himself, sliding into the driver's seat. "And tomorrow, I get to watch Jada graduate." He started the engine, pushing aside the war memories that clung to his mind like restless ghosts. For better or worse, he had a mission, to be there for his daughter. That was the anchor he needed right now. Late morning sun slanted through the windows of a small job agency office, giving the air a dusty glow. Declan took a seat in front of Mr. Hauser, a wiry man with a perpetual frown and thick-framed glasses. "So, Mr. Belmore," Hauser said, scanning a resume, "you have experience in refinery shutdowns, mechanical repairs, some security detail. Quite a mix." Declan offered a polite nod. "I bounced between jobs the last few years. Hard to stay in one place." Hauser cleared his throat, expression a bit stiff. "And it shows. Contractors want stability. You have any references?" The question made Declan's gut tighten. His references were scattered across different states. A few old supervisors liked him, but none had truly known him well enough to vouch for his personal reliability, especially after the legal issues with Serena. "I can give you some phone numbers," Declan offered, "but I can't promise they'll pick up right away." Hauser's frown deepened. "Look, we'll do our best. There's a short-term opening at a warehouse near the docks. Pay's not great, but it might be something while you figure out your next move." Declan forced a half-smile. "I appreciate it." Walking back to his truck, he couldn't shake a swirl of frustration. Civilian life often felt like wading through muddy water, every step uncertain. Nothing like the clarity he'd known in the Corps, where orders were orders, and you either sank or swam by your own discipline. He popped into a nearby diner, not Rose's, but an older joint on the east side of town to grab a quick lunch. As he chewed on a greasy burger, his phone buzzed. The screen flashed a name he hadn't seen in months. Winona. "Winona?" he muttered, swallowing the bite. Hesitation gripped him, but curiosity won out. He answered in a low tone. "Hello?" A soft laugh crackled through the line. "Declan, been a while. Heard you're back in Beaumont." He pressed his lips together, memories flooding and marrying Winona on a drunken whim in Oklahoma, the bigamy fiasco when her real husband showed up. That entire chapter was a messy bruise on his heart. "I'm here," he said curtly. Just trying to find stable work. She exhaled, sounding oddly nostalgic. Good luck with that. Listen, I'm just calling to say no hard feelings. Figured you might appreciate a friendly voice, let you know I'm not harboring grudges. He rubbed the back of his neck. Thanks, I guess. I appreciate it. But I'm not really in a place to— No, I'm not asking for anything, she cut in. Just be careful. I heard from a mutual friend you've got that old flame stirring trouble again. Declan tensed. You mean Serena? Yeah. Word travels fast. Let's just say keep your head on straight. She hung up before he could reply. He set the phone down, mind racing with fresh annoyance. The last thing he needed was old relationships stirring up gossip. But the call did remind him how precarious his stability was. He needed a plan, one that wouldn't crumble at the first sign of conflict. Leaving the diner, he decided to swing by Rose's next. Even though he'd been there yesterday, something about Cora's place felt like an emotional safe zone, a place to catch his breath. When Declan arrived at Rose's diner, the mid-afternoon lull had settled in. A couple of teenage girls sipped milkshakes in a corner booth, and an older man in coveralls scrolled on his phone at the counter. Cora was on her tiptoes, reaching for a box of paper cups on a high shelf. She brightened as soon as she spotted Declan pushing through the glass door. Hey there, Gunny. Didn't expect to see you again so soon. He offered a tired shrug. Just finished a meeting at a job agency. Thought I'd drop by. Cora set the box down, dusting off her hands. Any luck? He shook his head. Maybe a warehouse gig. Temporary. Better than nothing, though. Cora eyed him sympathetically, then jerked her chin toward a booth near the window. They both slid in, and she poured him a cup of coffee from a fresh pot. I got something to ask you, she said after a moment, drumming her nails on the table. Totally optional, no pressure. He raised an eyebrow. Sounds mysterious. It's about this local fundraiser for the high school. Some parents are hosting a fishing trip for charity to help underfunded sports programs. I volunteered the diner to provide lunches, and well, it turns out they need someone who knows a thing or two about fishing to guide a handful of kiddos, teenagers mostly. She offered a hopeful grin. You game? Declan sipped his coffee, letting the warmth settle in his chest. Fishing? He used to love it as a kid, before the core consumed his entire life. I'm rusty, but sure. Why me? Cora laughed softly. Because I heard from a certain Miss Lydia Parker that you taught her kids a thing or two about catfishing once, and she recommended you might be good at leading a group. Figured this might be a small break from your everyday stress. His eyebrows rose. Lydia Parker was a name he'd almost forgotten. She lived closer to the bayou, had 2 children, Jimmy and Lucy, who he'd met a while back. He taught them basic knots and lures after bumping into them by the river. I guess that's flattering, he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. When is this trip? Next weekend, Cora replied. Just a half-day thing. And we're paying a small fee for your help if that sweetens the deal. Lydia's kids will be there along with a bunch of others. Declan considered it, his shoulders unwinding a fraction. Count me in. But if these kids are rowdy, I might regret it, he joked. Cora grinned wide. I owe you one, Gunny. Thank you. He felt a cautious optimism stir in his chest. Maybe guiding a fishing trip wouldn't fix his bigger problems, but it was a step toward reconnecting with normal life, or at least a distraction from the weight on his shoulders. I'm on board, he said firmly. They spent a few minutes hashing out details, time, location, supplies. A small wave of relief washed over Declan at the thought of something positive to look forward to. Outside, the late afternoon sunlight peeked through the diner windows, warming the checkered floor. Just then, the side door opened, and a young woman in jeans and a plain sweatshirt slipped in. She carried a plastic bag of fresh produce. Her dark hair covered part of her face until she glanced up. The moment she saw Declan, she hesitated, eyes flicking between him and Cora. Oh, sorry, she said quietly. Didn't realize you were having a meeting. Cora waved her over. Marley, right? You're fine, honey. I was just talking to Declan about a fishing event. Declan, this is Marley. She's new to the diner, helps in the kitchen sometimes. Marley gave a shy nod. Nice to meet you. Declan offered a polite smile. He noticed a flicker of apprehension in her gaze, like she was used to keeping walls up. "Likewise, I hear you're doing good work here." She shrugged, shifting the produce bag. "Just trying to make ends meet." An awkward pause lingered. Then Cora patted Marley's arm. "Go on, put those in the fridge. We'll catch up in a bit." Marley nodded and slipped into the back, leaving a hint of curiosity in her wake. Declan didn't think much of it, but something about her guarded demeanor piqued his interest. Cora cleared her throat, drawing his attention back. "She's a bit skittish," Cora murmured, lowering her voice. "Told you she might be running from something, but she works hard, never complains." Declan nodded slowly. "Fair enough. We all got our secrets, right?" Cora's gaze flickered. Then she straightened, forcing a lighter tone. "Anyhow, thanks again about the fishing trip. Let me refill that coffee and I'll let you get on with your day." It was nearing dusk by the time Declan left Rose's. He'd stuck around longer than planned, partly because he helped Cora carry in new stock for the diner, partly because he felt oddly at ease watching the ebb and flow of customers, a sense of normalcy he'd missed for too long. He was stepping toward his truck when he noticed Marley at the side of the building, dumping trash into a large dumpster. She was struggling with the lid, her slight frame no match for the rusted hinges. "Need a hand?" he called out, not wanting to startle her. Marley jumped, nearly dropping the trash bag, then forced a smile when she recognized him. "Oh yeah, thanks." He propped open the lid, letting her toss the bag inside. A faint flush tinted her cheeks in the fading light. "These bins have been acting up for weeks," she mumbled. Declan chuckled softly. "I'll mention it to Cora. Might need a replacement or some WD-40. Marley nodded, stepping back to brush off her palms. In the evening glow, he noticed lines of fatigue around her eyes, like someone who'd traveled a long road with little rest. "You settling in okay?" he asked gently. She hesitated, gaze flicking toward the darkening sky. "Trying to," she admitted. "Cora's been real nice, letting me stay in that trailer out back. It's better than wandering." Declan recalled what Cora had said Marley might be running from trouble. He didn't pry. Instead, he offered a simple truth. "Rose's is a good place. You can breathe here." A small, grateful smile curved her lips. "That's what I'm hoping." They fell into a short silence, only broken by the distant rumble of a passing truck. Declan cleared his throat. "Look, if you ever need a hand with stuff or just want to talk, let me know. I'm no therapist, but I can listen." Marley's eyes flickered with some unspoken emotion. Then she nodded. "I appreciate that. It's nice of you." He shrugged, feeling a sense of camaraderie. "We all need someone to watch our six, right?" She didn't fully smile, but the corners of her mouth twitched. "Exactly." At that, she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and gestured toward the diner's back door. "I should get inside, finish up. Thanks again for the help." Declan offered a quick nod. "Sure. Take care." He watched as she slipped into the diner's warm lights, the door shutting behind her with a soft click. He couldn't shake the impression that Marley carried a heavy load of worry, something deeper than just job stress. Yet he also recognized the signs of a person who didn't want pity or interrogation. Sliding into his truck, he turned the key in the ignition, recalling how Cora had teased about his inclination to help strays. Maybe it was the Marine in him, or maybe just the father who missed out on protecting his own daughter for so long, but he felt compelled to keep an eye on Marley. Not to meddle, but to ensure she didn't slip into the kind of trouble that had once nearly destroyed him. He pulled out onto the road, headlights piercing the twilight. Thoughts tumbled through his mind, his plan for Jada's graduation tomorrow, the hush-hush fishing trip with Lydia's kids, the job that might or might not materialize. And now, the subtle worry about Marley. Life felt like a puzzle with missing pieces, but at least he was taking small steps forward. The memory of war still lingered, the ache of lost years with Jada still present, but a glimmer of hope snuck in through the cracks. Maybe, just maybe, he was finally learning to live again one day at a time, one person at a time. A stale, humid breeze settled over Beaumont's back roads as Declan Gunny Belmore parked his truck behind Rose's diner well past midnight. The diner's neon sign had been switched off hours ago, leaving only the faint glow from a corner street lamp. He'd swung by earlier to drop off some fishing supplies for the upcoming charity trip, but realized he'd left his wallet behind on a booth seat. "Figures I'd forget something," he muttered, cutting the engine. The night was eerily still. Crickets and distant highway sounds hummed in the thick air. Declan closed the truck door quietly, glancing toward the small trailer behind the diner Marley's temporary home. A single dim light flickered through one curtained window. He wondered if she was still awake. He made his way to the diner's rear entrance. Under the faint lamp, he noticed scattered beer cans and a half-crumpled fast food bag. The sight put him on edge. Cora usually kept this area tidy. As he drew closer, a shape moved in the shadows near the trailer. "What the—" Before he could react, he heard a muffled shout. It came from behind the trailer, Marley's voice, strained and terrified. Heart pounding, Declan hurried across the gravel, steps crunching too loudly in the oppressive silence. Rounding the corner, he found Monty Freed, a wiry, unkempt man reeking of booze, pinning Marley against the trailer's metal siding. Marley's hair was tangled in Monty's fist, her face contorted in fear as she tried to twist free. "Get off me!" she hissed, voice cracking. "Shut up!" Monty growled, breath foul with alcohol. Declan's stomach lurched, rage flaring. "Monty!" he shouted, heart thudding. "Let her go!" Monty snapped his head around, eyes glassy and bloodshot. "Who the hell are you?" he slurred, still gripping Marley by the arm. "Get lost before I teach you a lesson, too!" Declan moved closer, fists clenched. "Back away," he warned, voice low. "Right now." Marley gasped for air, tears shining in her eyes. She struggled to yank her wrist free, but Monty tightened his hold, knuckles going white. In that moment, Declan locked onto Monty's posture, unsteady but still dangerous. He could see the bulge of something in Monty's pocket. A knife? Maybe. Monty bared his teeth in a sneer. "I've had my eye on this girl a long while. She owes me—" He never finished. Declan lunged, hooking Monty's wrist and yanking him away from Marley. The two men stumbled, gravel skittering underfoot. Monty snarled, swinging wildly, but his coordination was dulled by alcohol. Declan blocked the blow with his forearm, adrenaline surging like he was back in combat. "Marley, go inside!" Declan barked. She hesitated, fear and confusion warring on her face, then she darted toward the diner's back door. Monty spat a curse, launching a sloppy punch at Declan's ribs. Declan hissed in pain, but managed to retaliate with a swift elbow to Monty's jaw. Monty staggered, cursing louder. Under the hazy street lamp, the fight was brutal and desperate. Monty tore a shard of broken bottle from his jacket, slashing it in Declan's direction. Declan jerked back, the edge grazing his shoulder through his shirt. Pain flared, but he twisted Monty's wrist, forcing the makeshift weapon loose. Monty's eyes bulged, fear creeping in. "Stupid jarhead!" Monty spat, half-sobbing in drunken rage. Declan slammed Monty against the trailer. The metal wall rattled. Monty tried to claw at Declan's face, so Declan drove a knee into Monty's midsection. Monty wheezed, sagging forward, but still fought like a cornered animal, raking his nails across Declan's arm. A red mist of fury clouded Declan's thoughts. He delivered a final vicious blow to Monty's head with the side of his forearm. Monty crumpled to the gravel, eyes rolling back. For a split second, Declan stood over him, breath ragged, heart hammering. The memory of that night with Arden flashed gun in hand, rage out of control. He blinked it away, forcing himself to check Monty's pulse. No heartbeat. An icy dread crawled through Declan's veins. "Shit," he whispered, pressing two fingers to Monty's neck again. Still nothing. Marley emerged from the diner doorway, eyes wide, chest heaving. "Is he, oh God?" Her voice trembled with panic as she took in Monty's limp form. "Declan, what do we do?" Declan's vision blurred. He'd been trying to protect Marley, but now he was staring at a dead man on the ground. The siren call of 911 rang in his head, but Marley's frantic gaze stopped him cold. "No cops," she rasped. I can't." He remembered her fear, her mention of running from something. If the cops came, her hidden past would unravel. She might be arrested, or worse. Declan felt a chasm yawn under his feet. We can't leave him here," Declan said hoarsely. "Help me. Let's move him before someone sees." Marley's eyes brimmed with tears, but she nodded. In the dim light, the two of them lifted Monty's body, adrenaline fueling every shaky movement. Declan's shoulder bled, and Marley's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped Monty's legs. Together, they dragged the corpse behind the trailer, searching for a spot out of immediate sight. Darkness closed around them like a shroud of complicity. Declan's mind reeled. He'd just killed a man outside Rose's diner, the place that felt like the last shred of normalcy he had. Now it was a crime scene. When the deed was done, they stood panting, hearts pounding in tandem. Marley stared at her trembling hands, tears slipping down her cheeks, and whispered, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Declan's throat felt raw. He couldn't find words to ease her terror or his own. In the shadows, they both knew the line between innocence and guilt had been crossed, and there would be no turning back. The glow from the diner's kitchen clock read almost 2 a.m. Marley clung to a cup of lukewarm coffee, hands shaking as she perched on a metal stool near the back counter. Her eyes darted to the rear door every few seconds, as though expecting Monty Freed to burst back in. But Monty was no longer a threat. Declan had made sure of that. Declan hunched over the sink, rinsing blood from his forearm. The gash left by Monty's broken bottle burned fiercely, though it wasn't deep enough to warrant stitches. Still, every throb reminded him of the lethal force he'd unleashed just minutes ago. We gotta figure something out," Marley whispered, voice frayed. "If the cops come." Declan shut off the tap, drying his hands on a dishcloth. "Nobody's coming yet. It's dead quiet out there." He tried to sound calmer than he felt. "But we can't leave his body behind the trailer. Eventually someone'll—" Marley's breath hitched. I know. God, I never wanted this." The small fluorescent light in the kitchen buzzed ominously. Declan pulled a battered first aid kit from under the sink and dabbed antiseptic on his arm. Tension coiled in his chest as he recalled the image of Monty's lifeless eyes, the horrific finality of that moment. "Listen, Marley," he said, forcing steady words. "I'll handle the body, but we need to move fast before morning." Her eyes, wide with guilt, flicked to him. "You're willing to do that? For me?" Declan's heart twisted. He saw the raw fear in her expression, a reflection of his own dread. He thought of Jada, his graduation hopes, everything that hinged on him staying out of trouble. But Marley's desperation mirrored the kind of helplessness he once felt, and something inside him refused to abandon her. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I'll do it. But then you need to tell me what's going on, what you're running from." She swallowed hard, lowering her gaze. The hush of the diner's darkened interior pressed around them. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but let's get out of here first." They moved in near silence. Declan found a tarp in the storage closet, used for covering delivery crates. Together, they returned outside, working by a single flashlight beam. Gritting his teeth, Declan hoisted Monty's limp form into the tarp while Marley kept watch. Every scrape of shoes on gravel sounded deafening in the still night. It took 2 trips. The first to haul Monty's body into the bed of Declan's truck, the second to gather Monty's scattered belongings, including an old duffel bag reeking of stale beer. Declan's mind raced. He'd have to drive somewhere remote, a place he could hide or dispose of the corpse. The moral weight pressed down like lead on his shoulders, but fear kept him moving. When it was done, Marley hovered beside the truck's passenger door, hugging herself. "Where will we?" "There's a swampy back route near the marshes," Declan answered, voice dull. "No one goes there at night, not unless they're looking for trouble." Marley let out a shaky breath. "I'm so sorry," she said again. "You're risking everything." Declan tried to muster reassurance. "I'm not letting you face this alone." They set off into the darkness. The tension in the cab was suffocating, the headlights carving a narrow path through the rural blackness. Marley fiddled with the hem of her sweatshirt, lost in trembling thoughts. Finally, as the truck bounced onto a gravel back road flanked by looming cypress trees, she spoke, voice a raw whisper. "His name was Justin, my ex. He was into some bad stuff, real bad, smuggling, laundering, and diamonds. I found out too late." Declan kept his eyes on the road, but his attention honed on her words. "Diamonds?" She nodded, lip quivering. I discovered a stash, hidden in a deposit box. When I confronted him, he threatened me. I took the diamonds and ran. An owl hooted somewhere in the dense foliage. Declan exhaled slowly. So, Monty? Marley's throat constricted. He was probably hired to track me down, or maybe he just heard rumors. I don't know. But I recognized him from the old circles my ex ran with. If the cops dig into Monty's disappearance, they'll find out he was after me. Then they'll trace it back to the diamonds to me. Declan tightened his grip on the wheel. This was bigger than a random assault. It reeked of criminal networks and heavy consequences. So that's why you said no cops. She nodded, tears gathering at her lashes. I'm in way over my head, Declan. He swallowed, glancing in the rearview mirror as if Monty's ghost might appear there. We both are now, he said grimly. A few minutes later, they reached a desolate stretch near the bayou. The air grew pungent with marshland decay. Declan parked under a drooping willow. Without a word, they climbed out, the truck's headlights revealing thick, murky water just beyond a small embankment. Under the glare, they removed Monty's body, still wrapped in the tarp. Marley looked as if she might collapse from shock, but she steadied herself with a trembling hand on the truck's tailgate. We can't bury him here. The ground's too wet. Declan's voice shook despite his effort to stay composed. But the water's deep enough if we weigh him down. Marley couldn't meet his eyes. Together they found loose cinder blocks near a crumbling old dock. The process felt like a twisted nightmare, tying blocks to Monty's remains, hauling them to the water's edge, and submerging the bundle in the murky bayou. When it vanished beneath the surface, Marley turned away, retching. Declan forced himself to breathe, to accept the monstrous thing he'd done. He'd killed to protect her, but the cover-up was just as damning. They drove back in silence, hearts hammering with each passing minute. By the time the diner's outline came into view again, the first hint of dawn glimmered in the east. Parked behind the diner, they stared at each other, ghost-like in the pale light. You saved my life tonight, Marley murmured, voice hoarse, but I've doomed you. Declan shook his head, too exhausted to offer more than a weary reply. We'll figure out something, just keep quiet. We go on like nothing happened. Marley nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. Neither believed it would be that simple, but in the fragile hours before sunrise, it was the only lie they could cling to. Morning brought an oppressive heat to Beaumont, Texas. Declan spent the early hours driving aimlessly, clothes still damp from the bayou. Eventually, he parked near the riverfront, leaning against his truck's warm fender. He stared at the slow-moving current, trying to reconcile the man he used to be with the man who'd disposed of a corpse just hours ago. By midday, exhaustion pushed him to find a cheap motel off Highway 90, where he took the world's quickest shower and collapsed onto a lumpy bed for a brief, fitful rest. He dreamt of Monty Freed's lifeless eyes, of Serena's raging accusations, of Jada's face twisted in betrayal. Waking up felt only marginally better. Late afternoon sun scorched the pavement when he returned to Rose's diner. Inside, the air conditioner hummed, mercifully cool. The place was busier than usual. Cora barked instructions at the new waitress, an older woman named Charlene, while a table of local fishermen guffawed over some story. The normalcy felt surreal. Marley was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with mechanical precision. She glanced up, her face pallid under the fluorescent lights. Their eyes met. An unspoken tension roiled between them. He noticed faint bruise-like shadows under her eyes, evidence of a night spent in terror rather than sleep. Hey, he murmured, stepping close so others wouldn't overhear. You holding up? She swallowed, nodding too quickly. Trying to, she whispered, her knuckles white on the knife handle. Every time I hear the door open, I think... He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, voice low. I know. But Monty's gone. For now we act normal. She set the knife aside, turning to meet his gaze. A swirl of gratitude, guilt, and a strange closeness passed between them. They'd shared a dark secret, one that bound them together in ways neither had intended. Thank you, she said, barely audible. I know you hated doing what you did. Declan exhaled. Hate doesn't even begin to describe it. A sharp bang at the back door startled them both. Marley jumped, eyes darting with panic. But it was only the produce delivery guy. Declan's chest tightened with relief, but he could sense the toll every unexpected sound took on Marley's nerves. "I gotta get these onions," she muttered, stepping away. Before he could respond, Cora bustled in, arms laden with condiments. She paused, glancing between them, eyebrows knitting. "You two look like death warmed over. Everything okay?" Declan forced a casual shrug. "Didn't sleep well. Probably the heat." Cora seemed unconvinced, but she let it pass, handing Marley a clipboard. "Inventory check, please. And watch out for Roy Lannister. He's been coming by more often. He says he's just craving coffee, but you know Roy, always fishing for gossip." Marley gave a shaky nod, and Cora left them to their tasks. Declan lingered a moment longer, eyes flicking over Marley's pale features. A quiet wave of protectiveness surged through him, mixed with an undeniable undercurrent of attraction he hadn't fully acknowledged before. She was vulnerable, haunted, and yet there was a steel to her spirit he couldn't ignore. "Meet me in the trailer after closing," he whispered, heart hammering. "We need to talk." Marley swallowed, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Okay." Midnight found the diner empty again, the neon lights extinguished, the hush of late hours pressing in. Declan waited near Marley's trailer, nerves frayed. He heard the soft crunch of her footsteps on gravel before she appeared, hugging a light jacket around her shoulders. "Thanks for coming," he said softly, stepping aside to let her unlock the door. Inside, the trailer was cramped. A tiny kitchenette, a worn armchair, and a small bed. A single lamp bathed the space in a dim, golden glow. Marley set her jacket down, hovering near the sink as though afraid to relax. "So," she murmured, arms crossed. "You wanted to talk?" Declan raked a hand through his hair. "We can't pretend last night didn't happen," he said, voice hushed. "If someone comes looking for Monty, we need a plan. And if the cops show up—" Marley's face tightened. "I told you about the diamonds. Monty might not be the last guy they send. My ex, his people, they won't stop." His gut clenched, remembering how many times he'd been in firefights overseas, always waiting for the next ambush. Now he was home, facing a different kind of battle. "You said you have them. The diamonds," he pressed gently. "Where are they?" She hesitated, then moved to a small cupboard above the sink. Pulling down a battered tin box, she opened it to reveal a velvet pouch. Inside, glints of brilliant cut stones caught the lamplight, refracting tiny rainbows onto the trailer's walls. "This is it," she whispered, voice trembling. "Worth a fortune. And a death sentence if the wrong people find out." Declan stared at the stones, heart pounding. The weight of Monty's murder, the looming threat of criminals, all radiated from that small pouch. "Marley," he said softly, "this is bigger than both of us. We need help, but I don't know who we can trust." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "I don't trust anyone, except maybe you." A pause thick with tension. Her chin quivered, and Declan felt a sudden surge of empathy, and something else, more primal. The shared darkness from the night before, the fear, the desperate trust, it all ignited a closeness he couldn't deny. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she stepped closer, searching his face as though seeking solace from the horrors. In the cramped warmth of the trailer, her breath intermingled with his. An electric current of mutual need flickered between them. "We're in this together," Declan murmured, voice tight. Marley's lips parted, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then she leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. The moment was charged somewhere between heartbreak and raw desire. Declan's pulse thrummed in his ears, but he remembered the chaos with Serena, the dangers of letting emotion drive him. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe. Marley's hand gripped his shirt, her silent plea for comfort cracking the final wall between them. He let his guard down, just for a moment, wrapping his arms around her, offering the only solace he could give. Dawn arrived with a faint rose-tinted glow. Through the trailer's tiny window, Declan watched the sun peek over the horizon. He was still dressed, perched on the edge of Marley's makeshift bed. They hadn't slept. Instead, they'd spent the night in hushed conversation, interrupted by occasional tears or lingering embraces that skirted the line between comfort and deep longing. Marley lay curled under a thin blanket, dark hair spilling across the pillow. She'd finally dozed off around 4 a.m., exhaustion overtaking her. Declan had stayed awake, mind churning over 1,000 anxieties. He rose quietly, slipping out the trailer door to let her rest. Outside, the air was cool and surprisingly fresh. The diner's back lot remained deserted. His truck sat where he'd left it. Declan drew in a slow breath, fighting the guilt swirling in his gut. He couldn't erase Monty Freed's death, nor the fact he'd helped hide the body, and now the diamonds added a whole new layer of risk. "One step at a time," he muttered, heading toward the diner's rear entrance. Inside, the hush of early morning reigned. Cora wouldn't arrive for another hour. He flipped on a single kitchen light, planning to brew coffee. The unexpected ring of the front doorbell made him freeze. Heart pounding, he peered through the pass window into the dining area. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a denim jacket stood at the threshold, scanning the empty booths. He wore a battered baseball cap, the brim pulled low over calculating eyes. Something about his stance set Declan on edge. "Hello?" the man called. "Anybody here?" Declan took a steadying breath. Putting on a neutral expression, he emerged from the kitchen. "We're not open yet," he said, keeping his voice level. "You need something?" The man's gaze flicked over Declan, a hint of suspicion. "Name's Quincy Pollard," he replied, voice low and gravelly. "I'm looking for a friend, Monty Freed. Heard he hangs around this place sometimes." Declan's gut twisted. "Haven't seen him," he lied smoothly. "Sorry." Pollard's lips curled in a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "That's so? Monty likes to talk about this diner. Claims he's got business here." He paused, studying Declan's face like a hawk. "Sure you don't know him?" Declan forced an easy shrug. "Guy might have come by, but I don't know everyone's name." Pollard took a slow step forward, glancing at the vacant booths. "Well, if you see him, let him know I've got something important for him. He was supposed to check in with me last night." His tone dropped ominously. "He's overdue." Tension thrummed in Declan's veins. "I'll pass the message if he turns up." Pollard gave a curt nod, flicking his gaze around as if committing every detail to memory. "What's your name, friend?" "Declan," he replied, stiffening. Pollard tipped his cap. "Declan, got it. Thanks for your time." With that, he turned and left. The bell jangled behind him, leaving an uneasy silence in his wake. Declan released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Monty Freed's associates already sniffing around? That was fast. A shuffle behind him made him spin. Marley stood at the kitchen door, eyes wide. "I heard voices," she whispered, fear lacing her tone. "Who was that?" Declan raked a hand through his hair. "Some guy named Pollard. Says he's looking for Monty. He looks serious and dangerous." Marley's face paled. They must have sent him. Oh God, I knew it wouldn't take long. He crossed the diner to her, lowering his voice. "We can't panic, but we need a plan." Her eyes shimmered with fresh tears. I can't face more violence, Declan. I'm scared." He squeezed her shoulder, swallowing his own dread. "Me too. Look, I know a few folks with military connections, ex-army types, who might be able to help us figure out how to stay safe." Marley caught the trembling edge of hope in his words. "You think they'd keep it quiet?" Declan nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at him. "If anyone can, it's them. Just let me talk to a friend. One of Cora's relatives who has ties to the army. We'll see if they can keep this hush-hush while we figure out our next move." Marley exhaled shakily. Her gaze flicked to the door as if expecting Pollard to burst back in with a loaded gun. "Declan, thank you," she whispered, stepping closer. "I'm sorry you're caught up in this." He placed a steadying hand on her arm. "We'll handle it. Together." Behind them, the morning light cast long shadows across the diner floor, an ominous reminder that daybreak didn't guarantee safety. Danger lurked in every crevice, from the possible discovery of Monty's remains to Pollard's prying questions. But as Declan looked into Marley's eyes, still brimming with terror yet tinged with resolve, he knew they had no choice but to move forward. "We'll do what we must," he said firmly, "no matter what it takes." A scorching Texas sun hovered high as Declan Gunny Belmore drove along a winding rural highway, sweat beading on his brow. Next to him, Marley sat tensely, eyes flicking from the road to the side view mirrors. Every mile put more distance between them and Beaumont, and hopefully, the men sniffing around for Monty Freed. But each mile also felt like an invisible countdown, ticking away from Jada's upcoming graduation. "You sure about this Chester guy?" Marley asked, voice tight as she fingered the diamond pouch hidden in her jacket. "We can trust him?" Declan nodded, though he couldn't shake his own anxiety. "Chester Grant was Army for over 20 years. He's Cora's uncle or cousin, kinda lost track of the family branches. Either way, he's solid. No stranger to keeping secrets." They turned onto a gravel lane flanked by tall pines, a battered mailbox reading Grant perched at the entrance. A short drive later, a sprawling ranch house came into view, low-slung, sun-bleached siding, plus a detached barn and corrugated shed. Past that, acres of land stretched out under the haze of midday heat. Chester met them at the front porch. He was a broad-shouldered man in his late 50s, with silver hair cut close and a firm handshake. Cora had phoned him the day before, explaining the urgent situation, and he'd invited Declan and Marley to lie low. "You look rough, Gunny," Chester said, narrowing his gaze. "Heard you got yourself tangled up in some serious business." Declan managed a wry half-smile. "Yeah, figured you could help." Chester eyed Marley, who stood half a step behind Declan as though bracing for a fight. "Cora said you're in trouble with some folks. I don't judge. But we don't want that trouble landing on my front door either." Marley swallowed, offering a respectful nod. "I appreciate you letting us stay. We won't drag you in deeper than we have to." Chester jerked his chin toward the barn. "Let's talk inside. Sun'll bake us alive out here." Inside, the barn smelled of old hay and oil. A pair of overhead fans turned lazily. Declan took in the makeshift setup, a couple of cots at one end, a locking storage trunk, and a wooden table covered with ammo boxes and cleaning kits. It was clear Chester still lived half in the mindset of a soldier expecting the next battle. "We can fix up the back room for y'all," Chester said, grabbing a water jug from a cooler. "Me and some Army buddies like to meet out here. It's got a basement we call the bunker. Solid concrete, good for emergencies." Declan exhaled relief. This was precisely the advantage they needed, a defendable place off the grid. Marley's shoulders eased a fraction, though the tension in her eyes remained. "Thank you," she murmured again. "I won't forget this." Chester handed her a bottle of water, sizing her up with a fatherly concern. "A friend of Cora's is a friend of mine, but I need to know what we're up against. Cora mentioned a gang?" Declan glanced at Marley, who nodded reluctantly. They gave Chester an outline how Marley's ex was tied to stolen diamonds, how Monty Freed came after her. They did not mention the gory detail of Monty's demise, just that he disappeared after attacking Marley. Chester listened, arms folded. "So folks are looking for that stolen stash. They probably want Marley, or both of you." Declan ran a thumb along his jaw. "We suspect someone named Quincy Pollard is sniffing around Beaumont. He's the one who showed up at Rose's diner poking for leads. Might have a bigger crew." Chester frowned, tapping the table with thick fingers. "All right, we'll keep watch. I'll bring in a couple of the guys Fisher and Jacobs, ex-military men who owe me a favor. We'll set a perimeter. The ranch is large, not easy to sneak onto if we have eyes on the roads." Marley lowered her gaze. "I hate dragging you all into this." Chester softened. "We've faced worse. Just be ready to do your part. No illusions, this can get dangerous real fast." Declan felt Marley's hand graze his. She was trembling. He squeezed her fingers briefly in reassurance before stepping back. "What do you need us to do?" Chester led them to a side door that opened onto a set of concrete steps descending into an underground space, the bunker. Flicking on fluorescent lights, he revealed a concrete-walled room stocked with old rations, water canisters, and a couple of gun safes. "If push comes to shove," Chester said, "we fall back here. Keep Marley safe. You can help me set up motion sensors around the perimeter." He turned to Marley. "If you know how to handle a weapon, I'll set you up too." Marley's eyes flickered with unease. "I'm not exactly trained, but I'll learn if I have to." Chester nodded, already in mission mode. "Gunny, tomorrow we'll do a walkthrough. I'll show you vantage points for guard duty. Meanwhile, you two get some rest. I got a feeling we'll need all the energy we can muster." Declan exchanged a glance with Marley, heart heavy. He couldn't ignore the swirling guilt that he might miss Jada's graduation if things escalated. But for now, survival took precedence. "Thank you," he told Chester, voice low. The older man just gave a firm nod. "We'll talk more over dinner. Welcome to your new hideout." Outside, the sun dipped low over the rolling fields, painting the sky with streaks of burnt orange. As Marley and Declan carried their bags into a small back room, the warm air crackled with both relief and dread relief that they had a safe place to stay, dread for the confrontation that felt all but inevitable. 3 nights later, the ranch felt like a fortress. Chester had indeed called in his old comrades, Fisher and Jacobs, both men pushing 50, but still brimming with disciplined toughness. They spent days installing extra floodlights, motion detectors, and even a couple of hidden cameras along the tree line. Marley tried to keep out of sight in the barn or the bunker, taking instructions from Chester on basic firearm safety. Her eyes always flicked with nervous energy, scanning the horizon as though expecting a storm of armed men any second. Declan found himself pacing the ranch yard each evening, phone clutched in his hand. He'd called the high school to confirm details about Jada's graduation. The ceremony was next week. Every day that passed felt like a new layer of dread. If the criminals attacked too late, he'd miss the ceremony. If he left early, Marley would be vulnerable. "Hey, Gunny," Chester called one afternoon, strolling up with a rifle slung over his shoulder. "We got a plan for you to slip away for that graduation, but let's hope these folks show their hand before then." Declan nodded, appreciation warring with worry. "Thanks, Chester. Let's just pray we can finish this soon." They didn't have to wait long. Just past midnight on the 3rd night, the ranch's perimeter alarm shrieked through the darkness. Floodlights popped on automatically, illuminating a stretch of fence where silhouettes darted behind the tree line. Declan, sleeping on a cot in the barn, snapped awake, adrenaline pounding. He yanked on boots and grabbed his handgun. Marley, wide-eyed, scrambled from her makeshift bed. "Stay close to Chester," Declan hissed, pressing a trembling hand to her shoulder. "He'll keep you safe." She looked terrified, but nodded. "You be careful." Within seconds, the ranch yard buzzed with motion. Fisher and Jacobs took up positions near the barn, rifles at the ready. Chester stationed himself behind a low wall of sandbags they'd set up earlier. Declan crouched near the main fence line, scanning the darkness beyond for movement. "We see you out there," Chester bellowed into the night, voice echoing through the pines. "You step onto this property. It's your funeral." A tense silence. Then muzzle flashes strobed from the trees, bullets thudding into the dirt. Declan ducked, returning fire in short bursts. "2, maybe 3 of them," he shouted to Chester. "Hard to tell in the dark." Chester let out a curse. "I got one on the south side. Jacobs, flank left." Jacobs moved swiftly around the barn, disappearing into shadows. Another volley of gunfire crackled. The tension in the air was suffocating like the worst of Declan's deployment flashbacks, but now it was in a quiet Texas ranch instead of a foreign desert. Suddenly, a figure tried vaulting over the fence. Declan spotted him under the floodlights, a lean man wearing dark clothes. Declan squeezed off 2 shots, and the intruder dropped with a scream. Another shadow leapt back into the tree line. "Chester, one's down!" Declan called, heart hammering. Fisher advanced, keeping low behind a tractor. A short burst of gunfire, followed by a frantic rustling in the bushes. Then Jacobs's voice rang out from the darkness. "Got 2 pinned behind an oak. They're reloading." Chester seized the moment. "Declan, cover me!" Declan fired a suppressive burst at the tree line. Chester sprinted across open ground, sliding behind a fallen log near Jacobs. The intruders, realizing they were cornered, fired wildly in an attempt to retreat. One bullet ricocheted off the tractor, sending sparks flying. But the defenders held the advantage with superior positioning. Moments later, Jacobs shouted, "They're surrendering! Weapons down!" Everything seemed to slow. Chester and Jacobs, guns trained, ordered the intruders to crawl out. 2 men emerged, one with a bleeding shoulder, another trembling in fear. They wore black tactical vests, no obvious gang insignia, but clearly well-armed. The man Declan had shot near the fence moaned in the dirt, wounded but alive. "Hands on your head," Chester barked. Any sudden moves, we put you down." The men complied, dropping to their knees. Tension lingered in the humid night air, bright floodlights illuminating the surreal scene, three intruders subdued at a quiet ranch under a moonlit sky. Marley, watching from inside the barn, felt a jolt of relief mixed with horror. She recognized the haunted look in Declan's eyes, the same look he'd had after dealing with Monty Freed. But for now, at least they were safe. Chester signaled Fisher to seize the intruders' weapons. "We got them," he growled. "Question is, what do we do next?" A tense, humid dawn broke over Chester's ranch as the captured intruders lay bound in the makeshift bunker. The wounded man from the fence line, a bullet hole in his thigh, groaned in pain on a cot. Chester's friend Fisher, who had some rudimentary medical training, pressed gauze to the wound, stifling the bleeding. "You're lucky," Fisher muttered grimly. "Could have been a headshot." In a corner, the other two men sat with wrists duct-taped, glaring at their captors. Marley hovered near the bunker's entrance, anxiety twisting her stomach. She kept her distance, eyes flicking between the armed defenders Declan, Chester, Jacobs, and Fisher, and the scowling intruders. She feared the men recognized her from her ex's network. Declan stepped forward, jaw tight. "Who sent you?" The largest intruder spat on the floor, refusing to speak. The other, younger and gaunt, cast a furtive glance at Marley. We had orders," he said, voice shaking. "A job to retrieve property, that's all I know." Chester crossed his arms. "Property meaning diamonds, right?" Neither intruder confirmed it, but their silence spoke volumes. The older captive sneered. "You think we're alone? We'll have more men. You can't hide forever." Jacob snorted, checking the rifle in his hands. "You sure about that?" Marley's heart pounded. She recalled Monty Freed's leering face, the relentless pursuit. Even if they'd beaten this small crew, more could follow. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to shed in front of these thugs. "So," Chester said quietly, turning to Declan, "we have three. The question is, do we call the cops and risk everything, or handle it ourselves?" Declan's pulse hammered. He remembered the last time he'd confronted the law in Serena's bedroom, gun drawn. That fiasco cost him his daughter's childhood. Now, calling the cops could blow open Marley's secrets, Monty Freed's disappearance, everything. He looked to Marley. She locked eyes with him, trembling, and he read the unspoken plea. No police. "If we hand them over," Declan said softly, "they'll start talking. Then it's a matter of time before we're implicated in Monty's death." Chester's gaze hardened. "And if we let them go, they'll come back with more men." A tense pause settled. The moaning man on the cot hissed a curse, his blood spotting the bandage. Fisher pressed a fresh gauze pad, ignoring the man's flinch. "Look, we can't keep them forever," Jacobs muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "Not like we run a private prison." Marley shuddered, stepping closer to Declan. "We can't kill them," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Please, no more killing." Declan's mind churned. He'd seen enough death in Afghanistan. The memory of Monty Freed's lifeless stare haunted him. There might be another way. He looked at Chester. "We know these guys have superiors. Maybe we can scare them into lying low, feed them a story that the diamonds are gone. If they think they can't recover the loot, maybe they'll cut their losses." Chester considered it, eyes narrowed. "Worth a shot, but we gotta be convincing." Jacobs let out a snort. "We can stage something like we destroyed the diamonds or shipped them out of reach, then release these punks with a warning." Fisher glanced at the wounded man who was turning paler. "He needs real medical attention soon, or we risk losing him. That brings its own problems." Marley swallowed a lump of panic. "If they tell their bosses we have the diamonds, the hunt continues." Declan exhaled, voice grim. "We've got to craft a story. Make them believe we don't have them anymore." Chester nodded sharply. "We'll do it. But first, let's get some answers." He moved closer to the captives, crouching in front of them. A quiet menace hung in the air. "You want out of this alive?" he rumbled. "You go back to whoever hired you, and you say the diamonds are gone destroyed. No reason to keep chasing Marley or Declan. Understood?" The older intruder glared, lips curling. "And if we refuse?" Chester's reply was as cold as the steel in his voice. Then we take you on a one-way trip into the bayou. Nobody ever finds you." Silence. The tension was a palpable force pressing in from all sides. Even Fisher and Jacobs, who were used to tough talk, looked uneasy. Finally, the younger intruder nodded jerkily. "We'll tell them. We'll say they're gone." The older one, seeing little choice, muttered a reluctant oath of compliance. The wounded man just groaned, probably in no shape to protest. Marley's shoulders sagged with relief, though a new fear whispered, "What if they don't believe it?" Declan sensed her worry, giving her arm a reassuring squeeze. "Fisher, patch up the wounded man best you can," Chester ordered. "We'll haul them off to a highway near the next county. Let them call for their own ride." Declan drew Marley aside as Chester barked instructions to Jacobs. "You okay?" he asked softly, brushing a thumb across her tear-stained cheek. She nodded, voice trembling with exhaustion. "Yeah, thank you. But this is still so dangerous. They might come back." Declan tried to steel himself with a calm he didn't fully feel. "We'll handle it." "We have to." From across the bunker, Chester's voice echoed, "We better move fast before the sun's fully up. Let's get it done." By mid-morning, the dusty pickup carrying the 3 captives had rumbled away from Chester's ranch, heading to a secluded spot off the county line. Chester drove, Jacobs rode shotgun, and Fisher guarded the back with rifles at the ready. Their plan: dump the intruders near a remote truck stop with a stern warning to disappear. Declan and Marley remained behind, the ranch feeling oddly empty in the aftermath of the nighttime firefight. The signs of conflict were everywhere: bullet holes in fence posts, spent casings glinting in the grass, and the stench of gunpowder still hanging in the humid air. Marley stood near the barn door, arms folded tightly across her chest. "I keep thinking about that bullet wound," she muttered. "They were here to hurt us, but I still hate the violence." Declan sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. "I know. None of this is what I wanted." He glanced around the property. "We should tidy up. Don't want any evidence if local folks come by. We'll keep the ranch off the radar." So they spent an hour collecting shell casings, covering bullet impacts with fresh boards, and sweeping up broken glass. Each clang of metal against metal made Marley jumpy. Declan's back throbbed with tension, his mind spinning with the reality that the threat was only partially resolved. "Declan," Marley said quietly once they'd finished, "do you really think telling those men the diamonds are gone will stop them? What if their bosses want proof?" He gazed out at the tree line, shoulders tight. "No guarantees, but if they think there's no profit left, maybe they'll focus elsewhere." Marley's eyes shone with new tears. "I can't stay here forever, I can't keep running, and you have a daughter's graduation soon." The mention of Jada sparked a fresh wave of guilt in Declan's chest. "Graduation's in a few days. I can't miss it, no matter what." He swallowed. "Chester said if things are calm, I should go. You can stay here until it's safe." Her face fell, a swirl of emotions crossing her features. "You'd leave me?" He reached out, gently clasping her hand. "Only if it's safe. I'll come back. Or you can come find me if you need to. But Marley, I made too many mistakes with Jada. I can't let her down again." Marley nodded slowly, eyes flicking away. "I understand. I don't want you to lose the chance to fix things with your daughter." They stood in the barn's shade, the Texas sun beating down on the dusty ranch yard. A warm breeze stirred the straw at their feet. Declan's mind drifted. Monty Freed was dead. A group of armed men had threatened them, and they'd narrowly avoided another bloodbath. If more enemies came, how many more fights could they endure? "Look," he said, swallowing a knot of anxiety. "Let's see how it goes once Chester's back. If the men we released vanish and no new threat shows up, maybe we can head home. We'll talk to Chester about quietly unloading those diamonds safely so nobody tracks us." Marley bit her lip, then reached into her pocket, pulling out the small velvet pouch that held the stones. She stared at it as though it were a cursed relic. "They've caused nothing but misery." Declan exhaled heavily. "We can't keep them, but we can't just dump them either. They're your only bargaining chip if more trouble stirs. Let's hold on to them a bit longer." She pressed the pouch back into her jacket. "Okay, just until we find a safe way out." Footsteps crunched on gravel. They both turned to see Chester striding across the yard, Jacobs and Fisher trailing behind. Chester's face was etched with weariness, but he gave a curt nod of success. "We dropped 'em off miles away," he reported. "They know better than to cross this ranch again. Claimed they'd pass on the message about the diamonds being gone." Declan studied Chester's hardened expression. "Think they bought it?" Chester shrugged. "Hard to say. I made it real clear we'd bury the next crew. If their boss wants to push his luck, that's on him." Fisher patted Marley's shoulder gently. "We'll stay vigilant. You two can rest easy for now." A brittle calm settled. Declan let out a slow breath he hadn't realized he was holding. For the moment, at least, they'd dodged another bullet literally and figuratively. "Thank you," Marley whispered, voice thick with emotion. "All of you." Chester gave a half smile. "Just watch yourself, kid. This might not be over yet." Later that evening, with the sun dipping behind the rolling pastures, Chester gathered them by the ranch house porch. Jacobs and Fisher had gone, promising to check in if needed. Declan sat on a wooden bench next to Marley, tension coiled tight in his shoulders. "We gotta plan your next move," Chester began, folding his arms. "Staying here forever ain't feasible." Declan nodded. "Jada's graduation's in a few days. I want to be there. But I can't leave Marley alone." Marley brushed hair from her eyes, expression conflicted. "I could stay, but I don't want to impose on Chester. Plus, once you're gone, I'm not sure how safe it'll be." Chester rubbed his chin. "You can remain here a bit longer. Maybe Jacobs can keep watch. Or if you feel safer traveling with Declan back to Beaumont, we can figure that out. I can broker a discreet sale of those diamonds. Funnel the money somewhere secure. Up to you." Marley exchanged a charged look with Declan. "I don't know if I'm ready to face more threats in Beaumont, but I also don't want to cower here indefinitely." Declan's heart panged, torn between fatherly duty to Jada and the bond he now felt with Marley. "We'll decide soon," he said quietly, turning to Chester. "For now, I think we'll head back within a day or two, if nothing else stirs." Chester gave a slow nod. "All right, just promise me you'll keep your wits about you. And if trouble follows you, make sure you finish it for good." The last rays of sun gilded the ranch with a fleeting glow, turning the shadows long. Marley gazed at the horizon, her posture weighted with guilt, fear, and a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, the worst was over. Declan gently covered her hand with his. They both knew more challenges lay ahead: the diamonds, Jada's graduation, and the fragile chance of forging a real future. But for tonight, at least, they had a moment of uneasy peace on Chester Grant's porch, breathing in the dusty twilight and holding on to each other in the quiet that settled after yet another storm. The Texas sun glared overhead as Declan "Gunny" Belmore guided his truck off the highway into the familiar outskirts of Beaumont. After days holed up at Chester's ranch, he felt torn, relief at returning to see Jada's graduation, mingled with fear that any lingering enemies might still lurk. In the passenger seat, Marley shifted restlessly, eyes sweeping the surroundings as though bracing for an ambush. "So much for laying low," she murmured. "Are you sure this is safe?" Declan's grip tightened on the wheel. "I'm not missing Jada's ceremony," he said, voice carrying a determined edge. "Chester believes we scared off the main threat, at least for now. We'll keep our heads down." They pulled into the motel parking lot near downtown Beaumont, a modest place with faded signage. Declan killed the engine and exhaled, glancing at Marley. "Cora said she'd meet us later at Rose's diner. Let's settle in first." Marley hugged her denim jacket, her expression subdued. "Sure." That afternoon, Declan stood outside the Beaumont High School auditorium. Banners celebrating Class of 2025 inches fluttered in the breeze. Students wearing bright caps and gowns hurried past, families snapping photos. Declan's heart pounded Jada was among them, and he was determined to be part of this moment, come what may. Marley lingered by a nearby tree, arms folded self-consciously. She'd insisted on hanging back, not wanting to overshadow the reunion with Jada. "Go," she encouraged Declan. "She's your daughter. You belong up front." He nodded, swallowing nerves. "If you see Serena, let me handle it." Marley gave a faint smile. "I'm not picking fights, trust me." Declan navigated the crowd, scanning faces until he spotted a figure with long, dark hair, Serena. Dressed smartly in a navy blouse, she stood near the entrance, arms crossed. The moment their gazes locked, her lips tightened. Tension coiled in the air like an electric charge. "You actually came," Serena said coldly. "Despite everything," Declan forced a calm tone. "I have a right to see my daughter graduate." She looked him up and down, frowning. "Where have you been, Declan? Off playing hero with that new woman?" He suppressed a flash of anger. This was not the time for old battles. "That's not your concern. I'm here for Jada." Serena opened her mouth to retort, but footsteps approached Jada, clad in her cap and gown. She froze a few steps away, eyes darting between her parents. A brief moment of uncertainty, then her face lit up, relief shining. "Dad?" Declan's heart squeezed. He stepped forward, ignoring the stormy look on Serena's face. "Hey, kiddo, you look amazing." Jada exhaled, hugging him with trembling arms. "I'm so glad you made it." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I was scared you'd bail. Or that Mom. I wouldn't miss this for the world," he murmured, feeling a wave of guilt for all the years he'd missed. Serena cleared her throat pointedly, arms folded. "The ceremony starts soon. Let's not make a scene." Jada pulled back, biting her lip. "You'll both watch me walk across that stage, right?" Neither Declan nor Serena answered immediately. Jada's face fell, but then Serena let out a grudging sigh. "Yes, I'll allow it." She gestured at Declan. "But don't start any drama." A flicker of hope sparked in Jada's eyes. She gave Declan's hand one more squeeze before rushing inside to line up with her class. Declan caught Serena's gaze, a silent plea to keep the peace. She responded with a stiff nod. "Fine," she said, voice tight. "For Jada's sake." The ceremony ended in a flurry of applause, camera flashes, and joyful tears. Declan kept his distance from Serena throughout, focusing on Jada, whose radiant grin melted years of estrangement. Afterward, amid the chaos of families reuniting, Jada promised to meet Declan later. Serena had whisked her away for obligatory photos. Marley reappeared by Declan's side outside the auditorium, looking relieved the event was over without confrontation. "She looked happy," Marley said softly. Declan nodded, throat tight. "Happier than I've seen her in a long time. I owe her so much." They made their way back to the motel. As they neared the parking lot, a familiar SUV pulled up Lydia, stepping out with a warm smile. She wore a casual blouse and jeans, her hair tied back, and her two kids, Jimmy and Lucy, peered from the back seat. "Declan!" Lydia called, expression lighting up. "Long time, no see. Cora mentioned you might be in town." Declan's face broke into a genuine grin. "Hey, Lydia. Great to see you." He gestured to Marley. "This is Marley, a friend." Marley offered a polite nod, glancing at the kids with a tentative smile. Lydia beamed kindly. "Nice to meet you, Marley." Then, turning to Declan, "Me and the kids were heading to the local pool. Thought we'd see if you wanted to join." Declan felt a pang of nostalgia. He remembered teaching Jimmy and Lucy how to fish months ago. The idea of normalcy, a simple outing, was oddly appealing after the recent chaos. He glanced at Marley, who gave a small shrug as if to say she didn't mind. "Sure," he said, deciding maybe a few moments of peace wouldn't hurt. "I could use a break." Marley hesitated. "I might head back to the motel, actually. Let you catch up." Lydia frowned slightly but didn't press. "All right. Another time, maybe." That afternoon, the local swimming pool shimmered beneath a blazing sun. Kids splashed and laughed. Parents lounged on plastic chairs, sipping cold drinks. Declan found himself relaxing bit by bit as Jimmy and Lucy dragged him into a playful water fight. Lydia watched from the edge, smiling whenever Declan dunked one of her squealing kids. After the water games, Declan and Lydia sat side by side on loungers. A soft breeze rustled the chain-link fence. The kids were off chasing each other in a shallow end, leaving the adults a moment to talk. "You look different," Lydia remarked gently, studying him. "Stressed, but also more alive somehow." Declan let out a low chuckle, running a hand through his damp hair. "Been through a lot. Let's just say I had to handle some rough stuff recently." Lydia nodded, not prying. Well, you're here now, and it's good to see you. She paused, then asked, How's Jada? Declan's eyes warmed. She just graduated today. I got to see her. Feels like a weight's lifted. A comfortable silence settled, the scent of chlorine and sunscreen thick in the summer air. Lydia's presence reminded him of simpler possibilities. She was stable, kind, a caring mother. Despite the swirl of danger still lurking in the background with Marley's situation, Declan felt a tug of longing for normalcy someone like Lydia could offer that. But Marley's face surfaced in his mind, her haunted eyes, a pang of guilt. He was tethered to her predicament, and their bond had grown complicated. He couldn't turn his back on her, even as a part of him yearned for the peaceful life Lydia seemed to embody. Whenever you want, Lydia said softly, as though reading his thoughts. We could meet up again. Maybe do a cookout by the lake. Jimmy and Lucy love seeing you. Declan's chest tightened with conflicting emotions. I'd like that, he said gently. Soon. As dusk fell, Declan finally met with Jada away from the crowds. She'd changed out of her graduation gown into casual clothes, a stray hairpin still clinging to her ponytail. They chose a quiet corner booth in a family restaurant where the overhead lights buzzed gently. So, Jada began, stirring her lemonade with a straw, you disappeared for months. Mom said you were off the grid up to no good. Then you show up with some new woman? Declan exhaled, choosing his words carefully. I got involved in a complicated situation, but I'm fine. Marley's a friend who needed help. Jada's eyes narrowed with curiosity. Is she in trouble or something? Declan nodded slowly. The less you know, the better. But yes, trouble from her past. I'm just trying to protect her. It's messy. Jada fiddled with her napkin, expression torn. I won't pry. I'm just glad you're here. It means a lot, Dad. She paused, glancing around. Mom is not happy, though. She's been complaining nonstop about you and this Marley. She claims you're reckless, that you put me second. Declan's jaw tensed. I know I've made mistakes, but I never wanted to abandon you. She softened, taking his hand. I believe you. And I'm kind of tired of Mom acting like she can control everything. I told her earlier tonight that if she tries to push you away again, I'll move out. Declan blinked, surprise jolting him. Jada, are you sure? She shrugged, tears brimming. I love Mom, but she can be so stubborn. I've watched you two tear each other apart for years. I want to have a relationship with both parents, and if she doesn't like it, that's on her. A wave of emotion threatened to choke Declan. He squeezed Jada's hand. You shouldn't have to pick sides. I'm done letting her guilt me, Jada insisted, voice firm. Dad, you deserve happiness too, and if that's with Marley or someone else, it's not her business. Declan swallowed hard, gratitude and guilt swirling. Thank you, kiddo. I appreciate it more than you know. Jada smiled tremulously. Just promise you'll be around. I'm starting college soon. I'd like to see you more often. He nodded, voice thick. Count on it. The next day, tension simmered in the humid Beaumont air. Marley paced the motel room while Declan sat on the edge of the bed. She'd been quiet since he returned from meeting Jada distant, as if grappling with her own inner storm. I see how you look at Lydia, she blurted, breaking the silence. And your daughter. You could have a normal life here, Declan. He stiffened. Marley, it's not about... It is, she interrupted, eyes shining with unshed tears. You deserve peace, not running from criminals or dealing with stolen diamonds. Declan stood, crossing the cramped space. We'll figure out a way to fix all that. Chester's selling the diamonds. We can settle. Marley gave a shaky laugh, cutting him off. Settle? I'm not meant for that. Ever since I fled my ex, I've been on the move, looking over my shoulder. And now Monty Freed is dead. She swallowed hard, guilt flickering in her gaze. We crossed lines I can't forget. He reached for her shoulders, but she stepped back. Don't, she whispered. If I stay, I'll drag you deeper. Your daughter, your potential future with Lydia, it'll all be shadowed by my past. Declan's heart pounded. Marley, I don't want to abandon you. She mustered a small, sad smile. You're not abandoning me. I'm setting you free." Silence hung, thick with shared regret. Tears pooled in Marley's eyes. "Take the rest of the diamonds. Chester can finalize the deal. Use the money. Build the life you deserve. Maybe fix up that fishing shack you once mentioned. Or I don't know. Help Jada with college. Just do something good." Declan raked a hand through his hair. I can't let you leave alone. It's not safe." Marley's jaw clenched, determination flaring. "I've survived this long. I'll manage. If trouble follows me, I'll move again. That's what I do." A painful lump clogged his throat. He recalled how they'd risked everything for each other, killed Monty, fled to Chester's ranch, endured firefights. Now it was unraveling in the name of giving each other a chance to breathe. "Where will you go?" he asked, voice hushed. She shrugged, blinking back tears. "Maybe someplace by the coast. Start fresh under a different name. I'll keep in touch if it's safe." Declan hesitated, then pulled her into a tight, trembling hug. She sank into his arms, eyes squeezed shut. For a long moment they stood entwined, a swirl of heartbreak, relief, and gratitude swirling in the air. Finally, she drew back, slipping a small velvet pouch into his hand, the last of the diamonds. "This is for you or your daughter. No more secrets, okay?" He nodded, fighting tears. "Marley, I thank you." She pressed a tender kiss to his cheek, then grabbed her duffel bag. With one last, lingering glance, Marley turned and slipped out of the motel room door, leaving Declan standing amid the hush of that small space, the weight of the diamonds cool against his palm. Outside, the sun glared, reflecting off the asphalt in mirage-like waves. Marley disappeared around the corner. Declan's heart hammered with each step she took away, a pang of sorrow but also a thread of acceptance. She was right. He had a chance at a future here, with Jada, maybe with Lydia. Marley needed her own path. Collapsing onto the bed, he turned the velvet pouch over in his hand, the silent gift that had caused so much chaos, and might yet offer a road to redemption. Despite the ache in his chest, a spark of hope flickered. Maybe this sacrifice would grant both of them the peace they deserved. A shimmering summer sun cast golden ripples across the Neches River as Declan Gunny Belmore finished adjusting the collar of his crisp white shirt. He stood on a patch of freshly mowed grass behind his newly purchased home, a modest house that overlooked the water. Today was the wedding day, his and Lydia's, and a warm sense of anticipation filled the air. A simple wooden arch, wrapped in ivy and wildflowers, framed the riverbank. Folding chairs were arranged in neat rows, each adorned with small bouquets of local blooms. Jimmy and Lucy, Lydia's two children, zipped around the yard in dressy outfits, giggling with excitement. Declan watched them with a fond smile, heart brimming at the thought of this new family he was about to embrace fully. "You ready, Gunny?" Cora approached, beaming in a bright floral sundress. She wore a wide hat that shielded her eyes from the midday glare. Declan cleared his throat, feeling a flutter in his stomach. "As ready as a man can be." Cora laughed, patting his shoulder. "Relax, it's all good. You finally found your peace here, right?" He nodded, glancing at the small gathering of friends. Chester, wearing a pressed shirt for once instead of his usual field gear, gave him a thumbs-up from across the lawn. A handful of folks from Rose's Diner were mingling, sipping lemonade. Somewhere in the background, a local guitarist strummed soft melodies. When Lydia appeared at the back door, Declan's breath caught in his throat. She wore a simple, elegant ivory dress that flowed just above her ankles, hair loosely pinned. The sparkle in her eyes told him she shared his joy and relief at reaching this point despite the trials each had faced. Jimmy and Lucy rushed to her side, beaming at their mom. Then they took their places, Lucy as the enthusiastic flower girl and Jimmy as the ring bearer. Declan moved to stand beneath the ivy arch, nerves replaced by a tender warmth. The officiant, a kindly local pastor, smiled broadly as Lydia approached. Her steps were measured, graceful, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers that Jimmy and Lucy had helped pick. When she reached Declan, he gently took her free hand, heart pounding at the reality of this moment. "We gather here," began the pastor in a clear, cheerful tone, "to celebrate the union of two souls who've traveled rough roads and found each other at the end of the storm." Soft chuckles rippled through the guests. Declan caught a glimpse of Serena in the second row, seated next to Jada. It still felt surreal to have his ex-wife present. But after months of tension, she'd agreed to attend, if only to show a semblance of support for Jada's sake. Serena's expression was pensive, maybe even sad, but not hostile. Jada, on the other hand, glowed with genuine happiness, giving Declan a small wave of encouragement. The ceremony passed in a blur of heartfelt vows. Lydia spoke of finding warmth in Declan's steady presence, how he guided Jimmy and Lucy with patience, and how she admired his courage through adversity. Declan, voice thick with emotion, promised to stand by Lydia's side, to build a home filled with quiet joys and second chances. He thanked her for showing him that life after so much chaos could still hold promise. Lucy scattered flower petals around them as they exchanged simple gold bands. Then, with a broad grin, the pastor pronounced them husband and wife. Applause and cheers rose from the small crowd. Lydia's eyes shone as Declan leaned in for a gentle kiss, brief but electric, sealing their new beginning. Jimmy and Lucy whooped, darting around to hug them. Cora snapped photos on an old Polaroid, waving each developing print in the air. Chester offered a hearty congratulations, joking about how he'd always known Declan would settle down when the right gal came along. Serena approached last, holding a small box in her hands. She hesitated, an air of uncertainty around her. "Here," she said softly, extending the box toward Declan. "I know I haven't always been gracious, but I wanted to give you something." Declan blinked, accepting the gift. Inside lay a modest silver picture frame containing a photo of Jada at her graduation. The moment when she'd thrown her cap in the air, face aglow with triumph. "Serena," he murmured, throat tight. "Thank you." She nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. "We've both hurt each other a lot. But Jada's grown now. She wants us to move forward. I'm trying." He placed a hand over hers. "It means more than you know." The tension between them lingered, but that old bitterness had softened. Today was a day of small but significant reconciliations. A few weeks after the wedding, Declan woke early one morning to bright sunlight spilling through the bedroom curtains. Lydia dozed beside him, hair tousled, an image of peaceful contentment. He slipped out quietly, careful not to wake her, and padded into the living room to make coffee. The smell of fresh brew and bacon soon wafted through the air, Lucy and Jimmy rummaging for cereal bowls in the kitchen. Declan sat at the table, rifling through the mail, bills, junk flyers, and a postcard. His heart jolted at the sight of the handwriting scrawled across the back. "Hi, Gunny. Found a place to breathe by the coast. A small cafe job helps me stay afloat. Thought of you when I saw the sunset on the waves. Thank you for everything. If our paths ever cross again, I hope it's in calmer waters. Marley." A lump formed in his throat. He turned the postcard over. A photograph of an idyllic beach at dusk, pastel sky blending into soft waves. Sand dunes framed a tiny cottage in the distance. It looked peaceful, exactly the kind of tranquility Marley had always craved. "Who's that from?" Lydia's sleepy voice, warm and curious, came from behind him. Declan held up the postcard, a gentle pang of nostalgia. "An old friend." Lydia caught the look in his eyes, sad but also relieved. "Is she all right?" He exhaled, setting the card on the table. "Seems so. She's found a place by the ocean." Lydia touched his shoulder. "I'm glad. Sometimes people just need to wander." Declan sipped his coffee, gaze lingering on the postcard's vibrant colors. He pictured Marley's determined face, the fear that once haunted her eyes. Now she was free, forging a path he'd only glimpsed. A swirl of emotions, gratitude, a hint of longing settled into acceptance. "I hope she finds her peace," he murmured. Lucy scampered over, asking for help with the peanut butter jar, and the conversation shifted. But Declan tucked the postcard away with reverence, a reminder of the sacrifices they both made to carve out new lives. That afternoon, Jada visited Serena in the old family house. The living room carried echoes of tense nights, shouting, slammed doors. But today felt calmer, the windows open to let in the summer breeze. Serena fussed with a stack of laundry, her movements oddly hesitant. "You said you wanted to talk, Jada?" Jada nodded, taking a seat on the worn sofa. "Mom, I'm starting college soon. I need to know if we're okay." Serena set down a shirt and sighed. "I've been reflecting a lot since your dad's wedding. There's so much resentment I clung to. I blamed him for leaving for that night with Arden. But it's in the past." She paused, voice thick. "I'm sorry I tried to keep you apart from him." Jada's eyes teared up. "I appreciate you saying that, but it hurt. Knowing Dad missed big moments in my life because you pushed him away." Serena's shoulders slumped. "I was angry, Jada. Angry at him, at myself, at how things ended. I convinced myself I was protecting you." Soft silence stretched between them, broken only by the oscillating fan buzzing in the corner. "I'm not a kid anymore," Jada said gently. "I love you, but I also love Dad. That won't change. We can't rewrite the past, but maybe we can move forward." Serena rubbed her eyes, tears escaping. "I know, and I want that too. I don't want us to be strangers or force you to choose sides." Jada scooted closer, placing a comforting hand on her mother's knee. "Thank you. Let's just be honest from now on. No more mind games, no more guilt trips." Serena let out a trembling laugh, nodding. "Deal. I'll try my best. I promise." They embraced, years of tension easing in that simple gesture. Outside, the breeze carried the scent of magnolias, a small sign that maybe, just maybe, fresh growth was possible. Late evening sun filtered through the sycamore trees in Declan's backyard. He reclined in a wooden porch chair, savoring the chorus of crickets chirping in the thick summer air. The hum of conversation drifted from inside, where Lydia and the kids bustled around, preparing a light dinner. A gentle sound of footsteps alerted him to Jada stepping out onto the porch. She pulled up a second chair, smiling as she settled beside him. "Peaceful out here." Declan nodded, tilting his head to watch the sky streaked in amber and pink. "Best view in Beaumont." Jada fiddled with a loose thread on her shirt, hesitating before speaking. "Thanks for letting me come by so often. It's nice having two homes where I feel welcome." Declan's chest warmed. "You'll always have a place here, kiddo." She leaned in, a soft grin playing at her lips. "And Lydia's great. Jimmy and Lucy, too. They kind of treat me like a cool older cousin." He laughed. "They adore you." The screen door slid open behind them. Serena emerged, looking uncertain but calm. She carried a tray of iced tea, setting it on the small table. Declan raised an eyebrow in polite surprise. "Figured I'd join you for a minute," Serena said quietly, gaze flicking between father and daughter. "If that's all right." Jada gave a nod of approval, scooting her chair to make room. For a moment, old wounds threatened to resurface, but the hush of twilight, the lull of crickets, and the faint laughter of Lydia and the kids inside smoothed away the tension. Declan offered Serena a small smile, taking a glass of tea. "Thanks." They lapsed into companionable silence, each lost in their own memories. Jada sipped her tea, glancing from one parent to the other, clearly heartened to see them coexisting without snapping. Overhead, the sky deepened into violet, silhouetting the treetops in soft dusk. Declan's mind wandered to Marley's postcard tucked in a drawer, her escape by the sea. He hoped she found the solace she sought. Meanwhile, he'd found his own, a quiet yard, a steady partner, and the beginnings of a repaired family. "It's been a long road," Serena murmured, as though reading his thoughts. "But it's not so bad, sharing this porch." Jada caught Declan's eye, beaming with cautious optimism. She sensed the shift in them all, no grand declarations of forgiveness, just an unspoken agreement to leave the fighting behind. With a final glow of orange light, the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the porch awash in warm twilight. A gentle breeze brushed across their faces. Declan closed his eyes, letting the contentment settle into his bones. He touched the small Marine Corps tattoo on his arm, recalling all the battles fought on foreign soil, in broken relationships, in desperate nights of fear. Yet here he sat, alive, forging a life that pulsed with second chances. As the last sliver of sun vanished, a quiet smile graced his features. "We made it," he thought. grateful for the ordinary yet miraculous gift of sharing a sunset with those he cared for. In the afterglow of day's end, he welcomed whatever tomorrow might bring, assured that while storms might rise again, he'd learn to navigate them and cherish the calm that followed.